remarks.
Very good morning to one and all. It's my pleasure to welcome you all for this continued nursing education program, which is a part of the activity that has been taken up by Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences during the second wave of COVID that is now bothering us, and all on a whole the state is gripped, not only the state but the entire nation and the globe is gripped with this second wave. All of us have gone through the first phase right from last year March, and we could come out of it with safely. But somehow the second wave has hit us hard, and we were all taken aback. But nevertheless, the human spirit, the human endurance is such that we can overcome any grief, overcome any crisis, overcome any sort of obstacles that come our way. So let us all get together in our fight against the COVID second wave. I'm sure all of you are aware that after the night, there is always a day. After the storm, there is always a lull. And after the rains, there is always a dry day. So good things are going to come back. It's not that this is forever. It's going to pass off. We need to all be together to see that this crisis is tided over. And in order to tide over this crisis, we as healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, allied health staff, all of us have to fight together and try to overcome this crisis, this pandemic. In our pursuit, we should also be well equipped. And how we can be well equipped is by having accurate knowledge, authentic information about the disease. You are all aware that COVID-19 is a very enigmatic disease. It has kept changing its colors. It has kept changing its facets. Every day, some new thing is coming up in the COVID management, in the COVID treatment, COVID protocols, COVID manifestations. Nowadays, we are all talking about the differences between the first wave and the second wave. These clinical manifestations, the way it is affecting the younger lot than the older lot in the first wave, and so many things. And ever increasing demand for drugs, for oxygen, for ICU beds is always there. So in order to combat all these things, and also you're all aware that not only the doctors, the nurses, the paramedical staff and allied health sciences who play a role, there are so many other supporting staff in the form of home guards, policemen, Porokarmikas, and many others who are chipping in, ambulance drivers, helping us out in supporting the management of COVID-19. Let there not be any gloom. Let there not be any depression. Let us all fight together, hold our hands with each other, lend our shoulders to each other, help anybody, who known person or unknown person, help them in whatever way we can. Even passing on a good, correct information itself is a lot of human service that we do. So each one of us can play a role in our own way in helping others. So this is the time that all of us are being tested. This is the time that all of us have to go through. Let us all fight this together. And in that pursuit, Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences has organized this CNE programs continuously. We have been having last 2-3 weeks on every Tuesday and Friday. And in between, if there is any other important topic that needs to be covered, we are also covering it up. Like, for example, on 6th, we are having a talk by Dr. V. Ravi regarding the genomics of the virus, why it is important at this point of time to know about the viral genomic, how it changes, how it mutates, and what is the effect of this mutation on things. Having said that, today we are now facing this program is being organized under the auspices of RGHS and ECHO India, online training education program. The role of challenging nurses in COVID-19 second wave pandemic. The ever increasing role of the nurses in the pandemic cannot be overemphasized. It's very, very important that nurses chip in at the right place, at the right time. And what is their role? How they can help us out, how they can treat the COVID patients, in what way they can get involved, is what is all about today. And to discuss this, we have Mrs. Rebecca, Senior Nursing Officer from NIMHANS, Mrs. Asha Vijayan, Senior Nursing Officer again from NIMHANS, and also Dr. Zeenat Kerina, Chief Nursing Officer, RL Jalapa Hospital and Research Center, Tamakat, Kolar. On behalf of RGHS, I welcome all the three speakers and also thank them for accepting this invitation. I'm sure there are more than 1,000 viewers already who are eager to listen to you. That shows how important that knowledge dissemination, correct knowledge dissemination is very important. And all these people, 1,000 people who have logged in, and many are trying to log in because of the space constraint. Only we can allow 1,000. That shows how popular this program is. And all the three speakers will do justice and give them take-home messages which can be, bringing out a lot of help to the patient care. Thank you so much. I wish you all the function. All of you be safe, take care, follow all COVID appropriate behavior, and do not get affected by COVID. Be safe, take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now today's program goes like this. The first is the presentation by the speakers, followed by the question and answer session, and then followed by the vote of thanks. Now over to the speakers. Rebecca, madam.
Yes, sir.
Start your.
Am I audible?
Yes, madam, very much audible.
Okay, thank you. A very good morning to you all. I'm Rebecca K, Infection Control Nurse and Senior Nursing Officer in NIMHANS. I'm extremely thankful to the Vice Chancellor and the Rajiv Gandhi University and Health Sciences organizers. And also I thank God Almighty for giving this opportunity. Also, I'm grateful to Dr. Veena Kumari, who has been our Infection Control Officer, Professor in Department of Neuromicrobiology, who has been the guidance for us for this presentation especially. And I thank Principal Dr. Katyayani for her trust and support on these things. And so I start this session with the Florence Nightingale quotes. I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse. So I want to give on behalf of Rajiv Gandhi University and ECHO India a big salute to all nursing fraternity COVID warriors. You are real COVID warriors, and as CDC states, every breath sends out a cloud of respiratory droplets. It's true in this scenario. If you look into the today's topic, the challenging role of nurses in the second wave COVID-19 pandemic. So first, the outline, the facts about the coronavirus disease outbreak and the differences between the first wave and the second wave of COVID-19 and nurses' role in COVID management in the hospital, in the community and home. So what is the scenario? If you see the COVID-19 outbreak globally, it was reported in WHO coronavirus dashboard. Nearly 150 million are confirmed cases of COVID-19 is reported by WHO. And vaccination status, these numbers you can see. And in India, if you see, it is 18 million confirmed cases as of 30th April 2021 to from 3rd January 2020. And the vaccination, yeah, it's a long drive. It is a long way to go. And the facts, if you see about the COVID-19, here the COVID-19 is caused by a virus and it is not by bacteria. So this has come from the family of viruses called Coronaviridae, and as everyone knew about this, and from the it was first identified in December 2019 from Wuhan, China. So it is not a bacterial infection. So it is a virus. It is caused by the virus. And whether the vitamin and mineral supplements can cure COVID-19? No, vitamin and mineral supplements cannot cure COVID-19. That is a fact. Okay, related to fomite transmission, whether the likelihood of shoes spreading COVID-19 is there or not, if we say the fact is very, very low, and the fomite transmission is very low, but we need to be very cautious. by following all standard precautions. The next mythbuster is the prolonged use of medical mask, whether it causes carbon dioxide intoxication or oxygen deficiency. As the fact says, WHO says that the prolonged use of medical mask, when properly worn by the healthcare worker, doesn't cause carbon dioxide intoxication nor oxygen deficiency. So the healthcare worker makes sure that it fits properly and that it is tight enough to allow you to breathe normally, and do not use a disposable mask, and always change it as soon as it gets damp. And the next myth is there's a fact actually, most people who get COVID-19 recover from it. Yes, mostly the population, if you consider 100%, nearly 80 to 90% can recover from COVID-19, and that is fact, it supports it. And this is the another myth, whether drinking alcohol can protect against COVID-19. No, it cannot protect against COVID-19, and it is dangerous and harmful to the health. And whether the thermal scanners, what we use it, whether it can detect COVID-19, no, it can detect only the people who are having a fever or there is no fever. It cannot detect people who are infected with COVID-19. That is the fact. And whether it is everyday's thing, every social media we can see adding peppers to the soup or other meals, whether it prevents or cures COVID-19, no, adding pepper or to your soup or other meal doesn't prevent or cure COVID-19, but yes, it has some antimicrobial properties that can be acceptable. And taking a hot bath doesn't prevent the coronavirus diseases. So people used to take bath in a very hot temperature, but it can burn you. So the fact is, taking a hot bath doesn't prevent the new coronavirus diseases. Okay, whether hand dryers effective in killing the virus? If you see, hand dryers are not effective in killing the COVID-19 viruses. So when your hand has to be cleaned, you have to follow hand hygiene. So either you have to wash your hands with soap and water or use alcohol-based hand rub. So this is the method that we need to kill the virus we use. And the next myth is ultraviolet lamps, whether it can be used to disinfect hands. No, fact is, ultraviolet lamps cannot be used to disinfect hands or other areas of the skin. So it is not meant for the skin. So it cannot be used. And again, next question is, two vaccines against pneumonia or Haemophilus influenza can protect against this coronavirus? Definitely not. It cannot protect against COVID-19 virus, but it can help people with the respiratory problems, these vaccines. And this is a myth now. It is strongly in the social media. Rinsing with nose with saline, whether it can prevent infection with the new coronaviruses. No, rinsing the nose with saline does not prevent COVID-19. In fact, it leads into the aspiration and the consequences of that aspirations. So this has to be stopped. And can eating garlic can prevent with the new infection with new coronavirus? No, eating garlic, it is not preventing. It also has like pepper, it also has some antimicrobial properties. Are antibiotics effective in preventing and treating the new coronavirus? No, antibiotics cannot work against viruses. It can work against bacterial infections. So why the patients, hospitalized patients are receiving antibiotics is if they have a bacterial co-infection. If they suggest a bacterial co-infection, yeah, they may give the antibiotics for the treatment along with the COVID-19 positive situations. Okay, whether the people of all ages can be infected by the COVID-19 viruses? Yes, all ages. In the second wave pandemic, we are seeing from infant to the old age. So it doesn't leave anyone in the world. It affects all age groups, all groups like high level, low level, middle level, everyone are getting affected. So all are susceptible. So it can be, this COVID-19 virus is that much infectious. So when we see differences between the first and second wave, these are the facts that we have seen. Now we are going to see the differences between first and second wave. So China, and it traveled to India in the month of March, and it was very new and evolving kind of thing. But if you see in the second wave, we have a lot of awareness and knowledge into our minds, and a lot of protocols and guidelines laid down by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, ICMR, Center for Disease Control, and World Health Organizations. And in the first wave, we have started when the India was having 500 people affected with COVID-19, mitigation measures like non-pharmaceutical interventions, that we have gone into that nationwide lockdown. At least during the first wave, we had 5 nationwide lockdowns in India. But during the second wave, unfortunately, lockdown in different stages are happening. In few states are happening, like night curfew or weekend lockdown. So it is a matter of concern here. And if you see in the first wave, what the strategy that we used? Okay, once the patient is tested positive, or once the patient is identified with symptoms, immediately the patient will be tested, immediately contact tracing will be done, containment zones will be done, and for those containment people, testing will be done. So these are the measures that we used. But in the second wave, because it is unprecedented nature, we have seeing upsurge of cases. We are not able to do as of like first wave. And as I told earlier, it affects all the age groups, but in the first wave, it affected mostly the adult populations. If you see the symptom nature, it will be fever, cough, or loss of taste or smell, and breathing difficulty was the symptom that we have come across in the first wave, but add-on symptoms in the second wave. So we can see conjunctivitis, diarrhea, rashes, headache, severe myalgia, and then mental symptoms, delirium stages we are seeing in the geriatric populations. So in the first wave, if you see shortages of resources and manpower, we have seen in the first way. We have to stitch the PPE, how to go about, how to wear mask, more concentration on the manpower and the PPE were there. Whereas now in the second way, there is the oxygen paucity and the bed shortages and the shortages of the antiviral medications. So how, why, what is the thing? Even in the first way, if you think in the March 2020, effective reproductive number, what is effective reproductive number is number of people who are infected from infected person. So it was like higher level 3.75. A year later in the month of February, it was 1.65. You just see the drastic change that we had we had completely overcome the first wave. But later it suddenly rose sharply because due to, we can say, as a multiple super spreader events, as all of us know, that the events such as the politicals and melas and the poor compliances of the COVID appropriate behaviors, we are in the second wave. So more infectious and higher community spread, and it doesn't leave children and infants. But the one good thing, most of them are having mild to moderate symptoms, maybe because of possibility of vaccinations. So, and the next is very important, the first way that we saw the high stigma and the discrimination of the healthcare workers. Yeah, when the healthcare in the apartment, when a healthcare worker goes to the hospital, the other people usually look at it in a different way, treat them in a different way. But in the second way, there is less stigma and the discrimination against healthcare workers. Everywhere running towards the hospital. And if you see the vaccines, there was no vaccines. So we were waiting for the vaccines at last. Finally, we got a Covaxin and Covishield, and we have started our vaccination drive in a warfoot manner, and still a long way to go. And finally, the word called newer variants. What is the variant? Variant is nothing. The virus can undergo mutation. So the CDC has identified variants of concerns. It has 3 classifications, but in that variants of concern only has 5. So if the UK strain, we used to hear like UK strain, South Africa strain, Brazil strain, California strain. Oh, what is the strain in India? If you see B1.1.167, which is suspected to be the cause of the more deadly second wave in India and making India the second worst hit country in the world. So it is very, very alarming. So with this, we have to enter into the COVID management. So what is the nurse's role? Nurse's role is in COVID management in the hospital, when the patient is having symptoms or when the person is having, individual is having symptoms, he is coming to the screening area. And when the screening area, if he tested positive, there is a triaging is happening. So triaging in many of the hospitals is happening as level 1, level 2, and level 3. As name indicates, you might know it is a mild, moderate, and to severe. And if now the mild cases are shifted to the home isolation, and other hospitals, like in our hospital, we have categorized into, because we have categorized into green zone, orange zone, and red zone. Green zone, whether the patients with negative COVID report are admitted. Orange zones with the suspected COVID reports are admitted, and in the red zone, whether patients with COVID positive reports are admitted in these things. So first is the screening, and the triaging is necessary by the nurses. The triaging is done in many of the hospitals by the nurses. So role of the nurse is to triage. As a triage nurse, she is helping. And then now the Karnataka triaging, one more for home care isolation. Karnataka Department of Health and Family Welfare, yesterday evening they updated. They have given some algorithm. If a person tests positive for COVID-19, any telemonitoring health team, medical officer, physician, anyone performs medical triage of the person and assess suitability of the house isolation. If he is suitable, he'll be advised for the home care. If he is not suitable, then if he is having an asymptomatic or mild symptoms, then the patient will be shifted into CCC, that is COVID care centers. And if the patient is having the moderate or severe symptoms, he'll be shifted to the COVID hospitals. So this is very important. DCHC which will be having the oxygens, and DCH will be having the ventilators. So this is the managed algorithm given yesterday by the Karnataka. And in the level 1 admission, who is in level 1 with mild symptoms nowadays, with comorbidities and immunocompromised, all non-communicable diseases which they are not on treatment, or any renal transplants, HIV, all immunocompromised status patients are admitted in level 1. So what is the role of a nurse here? So she receives her with the PP with a warm welcome, does admissions, monitoring the vitals, temperature, pulse, respiration, saturation every 4th hourly, and administers medication, symptomatic medications, and something called drug reconciliation. What is drug reconciliation? So patients will be on antihypertensives, on anti-diabetic medication. So that has to be, history has to be elicited from the patient, and that has to be continued during the stay in the hospital. And antipyretics, of course, for fever, and antitussives for the cough, antiparasitic, I'll be discussing in later slides, and antibiotics. And assisting in basic care is important. Monitoring the lung infection, the nurse has to monitor and reassures the caregivers. And a well-balanced diet with hydration is essential, and nevertheless counsels patients and communicates with relatives over the phone. So this is the role of a nurse. But now currently no admissions because of the no beds, oxygen paucity. So what the government has done is the asymptomatic cases. Whose asymptomatic cases? Laboratory confirmed cases, but not experiencing any symptoms, but with oxygen saturation of more than 94%. Or mild cases. Who's this mild cases? Patients with upper respiratory cough and cold will be there, with or without fever or without shortness of breath, but having oxygen saturation more than 94%. These people are classified and recommended for home isolation, and teleconsultation for these patients are advised. So this is that. What is the nurse administrator role or nurse supervisor role in the level 1? So plans in the hospital, plans and organizes the staffing. It is very, very important nowadays because the staffs are getting positive reports. So very difficult to organize. So she deploys nurses from other departments too, and also ensures adequate staffing every shift, at least for 40 beds in level 1, 6 per shift has to be patient care, nurse patient ratio. And availability of resources like PPE, hand rub, disinfectants, all these things are availability, and insurance adherence to the standard precautions. Yeah, standard precautions adherence is very, very important because there should be a they have to adhere to the hand hygiene, they have to adhere to the PPE, safe injection practices, linen and laundry management, dead body management. So these are all the biomedical waste management. So these are all the respiratory etiquette sensitivity. These are the administrator or supervisor level. They have to make sure that their subordinates follows the standard precautions. And not only that, training and supervising, demonstrating, or putting in the videos, donning and doffing videos. That is the authentic websites has to be given, and then training has to be given, so that the breach of PPE should not lead into COVID positive reports. So that is the concern of this administrator of role of the nurse. And level 2 is patient who needs oxygen support and close monitoring with moderate symptoms. So here the role of the nurse, from 4th hourly to 2nd hourly, the vitals have come. GCS assessment is required, saturation, mental status, and administration of the steroids. Some may prefer dexamethasone and methylprednisolone according to the doctor's orders, and then anticoagulants, injection Clexane has been given, and of course with antacids, pantoprazole is used. So here administering oxygen, either low flow or high flow oxygen. So low flow oxygen, they give 4 to 6 liters of oxygen using nasal prongs and face mask. But high flow oxygen, they include venturi mask and non-invasive ventilations. So through humidifier, HME filters, it is given. And if these people, when these people are on oxygen, what is the nurse's role? The nurse has to ensure, because there will be, if the patient is on NIV, there will be a pressure sore on the nasal bridge. So that has to be taken care. That has to be padded nicely and then and lubricated. If and the patient will be having a dry mouth, so that has to be taken care. So doing a small things like taking a cotton with water and just sponging the lips will be the more comfortable that we are giving to the patient. So it's when the patient is on oxygen, it is very essential. These are the small things, whether it is fit tightly, any discomforts are there, or during position, whether it has come out. So these are the things that we need to see. And then if there are signs of any respiratory distress, then the patient will be shifted to the next level. So in this level 2, complete bed care is provided at bedside. Bathing, toileting, hair wash, oral care, perineal care, everything has to be done by the nurses. And diets, patients may not be able to take oral diet sometimes, so NG feeds are recommended. So nasogastric tube feeding has to be given. Patient positioning the patient every 2 hourly, and something called as awake proning, which I'll be discussing in the further slides. And we have to do ambulation if patient is not on distress or in recovery stage. And the nurse's role here is she liaises between the patient with the physician, between the healthcare professionals, other healthcare professionals. So she has become a liaison nurse here. So what is the administrator role in level 2? Again, she maintains adequate staffing, availability of resources, adherence to standard precautions, and not only that, maintaining interpersonal relationship in this stressful time, and coordinates with the other health team members, ensures infection control measures are in place, whether they follow all state policies when handling the deceased, and then assisting and interpreting the investigations, whatever is done, blood investigations, ABG and chest X-ray and high resolution CT scan, etc. And level 3 here, the patient with severe symptoms requiring ventilatory support at any point of time, they are admitted in ICUs mainly with the ventilators. They are totally dependent. So continuous monitoring of vitals and other parameters. And the nurse's role is here too, whether the patient is maintaining euvolemia, that fluid management, and lab monitoring of results, reports. And the patient will be on anticoagulants, anti-inflammatory therapy. So whether the bleeding parameters has to be assessed here, and updates on patient conditions to the loved ones. So when the patients are in ICU, so they have given a tab so that they can call the video call, so that it enhances the patient's recovery, and counseling relatives over the telephone, and then explaining the patient conditions by the treating team every day, twice a day. It's very important in level 3. So these are the nurse's role that we see here. The nurse as a mediator, she works with the doctor, she works with the patient, she works with the other healthcare professionals, she works with the relatives and family members. So in the hospital, the nurse's role are enormous. And even in the step down period, what is the step down period? When the patient is in recovery stage, patient will be shifted back to the level 1, and then while discharging post-COVID management in the form of booklet that gives information about nutrition, yoga, rest and sleep, helpline numbers, online appointments for follow-ups. These are all very essential. And what are the challenges that the nurse finds in the hospital, especially in catering special population? There is a mother and child population coming in the antenatal period, postnatal period, intranatal period, and person with mental illnesses. It's really, really challenging. And patient with non-compliance with the drugs for the non-communicable diseases, geriatric population, and there is something called ethical dilemmas like bed shortage because of oxygen paucity, whether to give the bed to the 30-year-old waiting for the bed or to the 80-year-old waiting for the bed. It is really, there is a dilemma in our mind that the challenges that the nurse is undergoing. Okay, so what is we have seen in the hospital. Now we are coming to the nurse's role in COVID management home. So home, in the hospital, in the home, once the patient is identified for home isolation, the nurse has to instruct the patient so through telecommunication. So some of the hospitals have, like our hospital, when the staffs have become positives, they have given one building, and so we can isolate ourselves, and it will be a well ventilated room with cross ventilation, and windows always will be kept open, and we use always triple layer medical mask at all times, and there will be a resident posted there and the nurse posted there with PPE. They'll be taking they'll be checking our status, health status, and we need to monitor every day temperature, oxygen saturation, and if we are diabetic, glucose parameters, and if you are hypertensive, blood pressure. So all these things, anytime caregiver entering the room, home isolation, they may consider using N95 mask also. But here the patient must take rest and drink lot of fluids to maintain adequate hydration. So that nurse has to ensure in telecommunication, she has to ensure that the patient has taken a lot of fluids and maintaining adequate hydration. Not only that, she has to teach respiratory etiquette at all times. And frequent hand hygiene. She should not forget to teach SMS. What is SMS? SMS, sanitize your hand always. And then always wear mask and always follow physical distancing or social distancing. And do not share personal items like mobiles cannot be shared, and ensuring cleaning of surfaces in the room that are touched often with 1% hypochlorite or with the bleaching powder, whatever the availability, we can prepare and sell. That will be dealt in the further sessions. And as I said, self-monitoring of blood oxygen saturation level, pulse oximeter is strongly, with the use of pulse oximeter is strongly advised. So the patient will self-monitor. If any variations, she or he will report promptly, so that it will be taken care immediately. Patient can be shifted to the hospital, COVID care centers or district COVID hospitals. And the last one is the psychological support and anxiety management. Okay, here the person, even the healthcare person, when they are informed about their positive reports, they are shaken. But when we compare the normal human being, non-medical people, really they undergo a lot of anxiety in their mind. They have to settle their families, finance, so many things they think, they come in mind. And a lot of social media's messages are making them so anxious, and they are able to deal with them. Because of that, they are not able to recover fastly. So psychological support and anxiety management, for that the NIMHANS counseling helpline is there. So it is actually published by the Department of Health and Family Welfare Services, Karnataka. NIMHANS counseling helpline 08046110007. So anybody can use, even the healthcare workers or the patients at home isolation, they can call up and they can get this counseling advices. Services are offered. And treatment for home isolation, it is mainly a symptomatic management. So when the fever is there, taking paracetamol and warm gargles, steam inhalation twice a day. This is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare Guidelines. Tab ivermectin is anti-parasitic, so it can be given. And inhalational budesonide, it is given only when the symptoms are not reduced. So versus beyond 5 days of the disease onset, then only it is advised. And do not attempt to procure or administer remdesivir at home. So the nurse has to ensure that, because the remdesivir word, now it is very common and it is threatening word nowadays. So, so the nurse has to make sure that they do not attempt to procure. And systemic oral steroids not indicated in the mild disease, that is for the home isolation. In case of falling oxygen saturation or shortness of breath, the person should require hospital admission and seek medical consultation of the treating physician and surveillance team. When to discontinue home isolation? So a patient under home isolation will stand discharged and in isolation after at least 10 days have passed from onset of symptoms. And also no fever for 3 days without antipyretics, and patient should be free from other symptoms. So in this case, the patient can discontinue the home isolation. And there is no need for testing after the home isolation period is over, even for the patients as well as for the healthcare workers nowadays, it is advised. And so proning for self-care. So I insisted in level 2 awake proning, and for home isolation also, if they have a compromised breathing comfort, this proning is advised. If proning, this is just nothing, like everyone knows, lying on their stomach. It is a medically accepted position to improve breathing, comfort, and oxygenation. And it is proven extremely beneficial for COVID-19 patients with compromised breathing. So when to do? So when proning is required only when the saturation level is below 94. Okay, and because it improves ventilation, keeps alveolar units open and breathing easy. So regular monitoring of saturation should be done, continue during home isolation, and we should not miss out any hypoxia. So that has to be told to the patients by the nurse, and timely proning and maintaining good ventilation could save many lives. And positioning of pillows, one pillow below the neck, 1 or 2 pillows like vertically below the chest through upper thighs, and 2 pillows below the shins. And for self-proning, we need 4 to 5 pillows. So regular alteration, like first the lying on the back and then right side, followed by sitting, followed by left side, and back to the position of lying on the belly. So this is the method. So 30 minutes is best is to not spend more than 30 minutes in each position. So there are some caution advised by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and where we should avoid proning: in pregnancy, in the treatment, recent 48 hours treatment, within 48 hours treatment, if the patient had DVT treatment, it is contraindicated, and major cardiac conditions and unstable femur, spine and pelvic fractures. This is the home isolation. So what is the nurse's role in COVID management community? Mainly IEC role. So information, education, and communication. So compliance of COVID appropriate behaviors. So again, SMS, sanitize your hand, and masking, wear mask, follow physical or social distancing. Vaccination drive has to taken as a war food zone. It has to be ramped up. So vaccination drive and testing and isolation, creating awareness in the public, to refer only authentic websites and not all the social medias posted by the people. So only like Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, ICMR guidelines, CDC guidelines, WHO guidelines, NACO guidelines. These are the guidelines that nurse can get their information and then convey to the public or to the patients in the community. Finally, as Florence Nightingale said, let us run the race where all may win, rejoicing in their successes our own, and mourning their failures wherever they are as our own. We are all one nurse. Also, there is something called yoga for evidence-based yoga practices that aim at improving immunity, lung function, sleep quality, and reducing stress levels. So here our NIMANS are very glad to announce that there is a Zoom meeting conducted from Monday to Friday, and this is the Zoom ID which I will be sharing you, or otherwise you can log into nimansyoga.in every day from 7 to 7:30 and 4 to 4:30 for the adult population, and for the pediatric population from 11 to 11:45. Even the patients can be benefited, even the healthcare workers can be benefited. And last, here's OTP Express. They want to appreciate our courage, so they give free unlimited veggies for a month for all nurses. So OTP is nothing but onion, tomato, potato. You have come across in everyday advertisement is there. Just you have to log in otpexpress.in, register, so that you will be able to get these benefits, and they are giving with. Thank you, and stay healthy and be safe.
Dr. Dayanand, Dr. Mahendra.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Sir?
Yes, madam. Asha ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Yeah, good morning, all. So the next session is COVID-19 infection, prevention and control. Infection prevention and control is a major challenges for healthcare system around the world. There is an important opportunity to reduce the avoidable morbidity and mortality through improvements to IPC during the COVID-19 pandemic. Benefits of IPC is protecting ourselves, protecting our patient, as well as protecting our family, community, and environment. CDC recommendation, additional infection prevention and control practices along with standard practices as a part of routine healthcare delivery to the patient. It should apply to all the patients, not only with a suspected or a confirmed COVID patient. Facilities should develop the policies and procedures. Component of IPCs are universal masking, early identification and isolation of patient with a suspected COVID, appropriate personal protective equipments usage, environmental cleaning and disinfection, safe disposal and management of COVID waste. Universal use of mask. Universal masking is required to all the patients, visitors, and healthcare workers. The goal of universal masking is to reduce the transmission, and symptom screening is not alone is not sufficient. So to identify the individual with the COVID-19, since pre-symptomatic as well as asymptomatic transmission can occur. Patient and visitors, all the patient and visitors should bring or to be given a well-fitting mask for universal source control. For patients, once they allotted appropriate room or available single room, and the door should close for the patient with a suspected COVID-19. Or if they want, they can remove the mask. But however, the patient should be instructed to replace the mask when any healthcare worker enter into their room. If the patient cannot don the mask themselves, it is important to the healthcare worker to wear the face shield or goggle in addition to the mask. Okay, this is the way now CDC changed double masking as well as knotting the mask as well as using a double masking along with the surgical mask or a medical mask and cloth mask. This is the recent updates. Measure all the patient, visitors, and personnel. Screening prior to the entry to the healthcare system. So any patient or any healthcare worker or any patient visitor should be screened. The patient should be screened for clinical manifestations such as fever, cough, myalgia, sore throat, dyspnea, and loss of smells, before entering into the healthcare facility. All patients should be screened for symptoms before entering into the healthcare facilities. Effort should be made for all the suspected patients to a private room if possible. If an examination room is not available, such a patient should not wait among the other patients. They can be visited in a well-ventilated room or their own personal vehicle till the room is ready. And the patient should be separated at least 6 feet. The patient without symptoms should be questioned about any unprotected exposure within the last 14 days. That's an important thing. And we can ask about the close contact with someone who suspected or high risk contact for COVID-19. And some institutions are screening the patient who is they are receiving from containment zone. Visitors during the COVID-19 pandemic, most hospitals restrict the visitors, or visitors should be screened for exposure. For 14 days, is there any contact with the high risk or confirmed cases? Healthcare workers, screening all healthcare workers before entering into the healthcare settings as per the institutional policy. So entry gate, they will provide the thermal screening as well as pulse oximeter. And the healthcare workers should monitor themselves for their fever or any other symptoms. If it is any, they have to stay home. They have to inform to their occupational health department or according to the institutional policy. The healthcare worker should be educated about the need to report all non-possible unprotected exposure to the COVID-19. Second, the hand hygiene. Hand hygiene should be performed immediately before and after the contact with a mask or any soiled or any respiratory secretions. So there are two types, hand wash or a hand rub with alcoholic solutions, and it is must to follow the 6 steps of hand washing. Patient with a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 approaches most patients. Infection control precautions should be used for all the patients with a suspected confirmed COVID-19. The room, it should be well ventilated and single occupancy room or with a dedicated bathroom. And the COVID-19 patient should not be, confirmed case can be together, but the suspected cannot be together. Patient with a confirmed COVID-19 should be in a negative ventilation room. There should not be a positive pressure. An airborne infection isolation room, that should be a single negative pressure room. And the PPE, any healthcare worker who enter into the patient room should be wear all personal protective equipments to reduce the risk of exposure. Standard PPE for the patient who is suspected or a confirmed COVID-19. Example, gown, gloves, and respirator or a medical mask and eye protector. Isolation gowns and non-sterile gloves can be used instead of a coverall. There's a recent guidelines from the CDC. And double gloving also some institution is advising. And the gown, no need to change routinely between the patients unless it is soiled or if the patient have any additional contact precaution like MRSA or multi-drug resistant organism. Caregiver should perform hand hygiene after and before putting the gloves as well as the PPE. This is the recent updates from the CDC. Previous is a coverall is advised. Now this is the preferred PPE and that is an acceptable PPE. N95 mask or high respirator can be advisable or face mask and then face shield also advisable. And they can be used to isolation gown and a single or a double glove. Respirator or a medical mask. The respirator N95 mask can be used. It provides a higher level of protection. And instead of medical mask, for example, aerosol generating procedure or any other environmental cleaning sections. If they are using exhalation with a valve or vent, the medical mask should be placed on the top of it. Eyes or face protection. The goggles are a face shield that cover in front and the sides of the face should be used along with the respirator or a medical mask. And if you are using a PAPR, that is a power air purified respirator, then the additional protection is not required. So this is the PAPR, N95 mask, surgical mask with 3 layers. That's a 3-ply surgical mask. These 3 types of masks are advisable. And some institutions require hair and shoe cover for providers, but there is no sufficient data is not there, but some institutions are using hair cover as well as the shoe cover. Sequence of donning and doffing is very important. It should need a special attention for appropriate sequence of donning and doffing of PPE. Errors in removal of PPE is very common, and even though if they are using proper PPE, when there is a breach in the removal, it leads to contamination as well as it leads to secondary transmission. According to CDC, this is a sequence of PPE, donning and doffing. You can refer in CDC. Transporting the patient outside the room, the patient with a confirmed or suspected COVID-19 should wear a medical mask when they are transporting to the other rooms. If the system is not available, then you can use a tent. So there is an example, there is a tent can be used. Or if the patient is not possible to wear the PPE, then the healthcare worker should wear adequate PPE. These are all the aerosol generating procedures: bronchoscopy, CPR, colonoscopy, and high flow oxygen, ventilation, nasal endoscopy, non-invasive ventilation, open suctioning of airways, tracheal intubation, tracheostomy, endoscopy, swallowing evaluation, chest physiotherapy, as well as nebulizer. These are all the aerosol generating procedures. An aerosol generating treatment, instead of using a nebulizer, metered dose inhale can be used to reduce the aerosol generation. If not possible, then the healthcare worker should be in appropriate PPE. Other precaution like eye protector, glove, and gown can be used. So this is the inhaler, metered inhaler. Instead of using this nebulizer, if possible, we can use the inhaler to reduce the aerosol generation. Aerosol generating procedure should be in an airborne isolation room whenever it's possible. Otherwise, it's not available, then the healthcare worker use all PPE and no one is allowed to enter into the room without the protective measures. It's an aerosol generating procedures. And as I said, the hood can be used when they are using an aerosol generating procedure. For example, when they are doing intubation or suctioning or any other procedure. If it's inside the ICU, we are not able to isolate the patient. So instead of that, we can use the hood. And specimen collection for respiratory and viral pathogens, a single occupancy room, and the room should be closed and no visitors should allow inside the sample collection area. Use N95 mask or higher level respirator, or if you are using medical mask and then eye protection or face shield or goggles, glove and gown should be used. Isolation and quarantine. The patient who had exposure of COVID-19 need isolation and unrelated to developing symptoms. All symptomatic patients should be treated if they have a COVID till pending evaluation. Who require quarantine? All the patients who had contacted with someone suspected to COVID or a confirmed COVID should be quarantined. In quarantine, apply all infection control precautions as well as suspected and confirmed cases. The patient should not be cohorted in a shared room if they are suspected. If they are confirmed, the case can be together. If the PPE is limited, then medical mask can be used instead of N95 mask due to the lack of supply or shortage. Then N95 respirator can be used. The quarantine should be 14 days with the last contact the infected patients. Optimizing supply of PPEs. Some of the strategy can be included to optimize the supply, cancelling non-urgent procedures and increasing the use of telehealth services or outpatient instead of inpatient, limiting the patients the movement from outside the room or any other for other procedures, and minimize the face-to-face encounters. You can use some screen or glass shield or something. Utilizing alternatives to N95 like a extended or limited reuse of PPE. In case of limited or extended use, we can use the PPE as a reusing in some certain situations. As an example, some hospitals encourage users to disinfect and reuse the face shield unless they become visibly soiled or not fit. Similarly, some medical mask can be used. Along with that, face shield should be used. And when we are reusing any PPE, it should not touch the front side and also in between the patient encounters. If the provider does touch the mask, immediately they have to do the hygiene. CDG suggests that mask can be used 6 to 8 hours, whereas the WHO state can be 6 hours when caring or cohorting confirmed or suspected COVID-19 cases. Discard N95 mask respirator following after the aerosol generating procedure. And if the N95 mask is contaminated with the blood or respiratory secretion, then can be discarded. Or in close contact with patient infected or confirmed cases, consider a use of clean face shield over the N95 mask. So this is now N95 mask is a shortage. So these are all the technique we can use to extend the use of N95 mask. Perform hand hygiene with a soap and water or an alcohol sanitizer after touching the any reusable PPE. Extended use alone is unlikely to degrade the respiratory protection. However, healthcare facility can develop clear policy for that. Decontamination of PPE for reuse. Decontamination, according to CDC and WHO, they're using ultraviolet light can be used. Hydrogen peroxide vapor like a fogger can be used to decontaminate the PPE, and sometimes moist heat also can be used. Environmental cleaning and disinfections, and many hospitals, the cleaning schedule are changed once in 4 hours. An appropriate disinfection should be selected according to CDC. Sodium hypochlorite 1% can be used. And all staff should be trained to conduct the cleaning in appropriate PPE. The workers should be trained for fit test, how to use N95, and trained to wear N95 respirator and face shield. Can use droplet or contact precaution like a eye protector, face shield or goggle, gloves and gowns when cleaning healthcare facility or the home care where the COVID-19 patients are admitted. These are all the disinfectant solution is concentration, and where it is readily available, 1% can be used, 0.5% also can be used for floor cleaning, and bacillocid also advisable. Addressing the barriers to the use of PPE. Despite of benefit of PPE in reducing the transmission of COVID, adherence to practice, such as prolonged use of mask, respirator, and face shield, the people feel very difficult to use the PPE and can be burdensome, uncomfortable to use. So mask fit, washing their eyeglasses with soap and water to avoid fogging can be taught. And biomedical waste management, and keep separate color-coded bins according to guidelines, 2016 guidelines only following, but there are some changes along with that. We have to use a double color-coded bins, and the bin should be labeled as a COVID-19 waste if it is a home isolation or from the healthcare facility. And double layered bags should be there, and no leaks, and the inner and outer surface of the trolleys or bin container, whatever it is, should be disinfected with 1% sodium hypochlorite. In home setting, isolation at home, outpatient with a suspected or a COVID-19 should stay at home and try to separate themselves from other people and the animals in the household. They should also be avoided having visitors enter the home. The patient should wear face mask if they must be in the same room. Caregiver and those who are sharing in a living space with individual should wear mask. When medical mask is not available, then they can use a cloth mask, but it should be washed daily. Educating the caregiver how to carefully put on PPE, that should be taught to the caregivers. And other measures like limiting the number of caregivers, we can allot a same person for taking care of a single patient, or having the patient using a separate bedroom and bathrooms, and minimizing the patient exposure to shared spaces, and good airflow should be there, air conditioner or open windows. When sharing spaces cannot be avoided, the caregiver should maintain the 6 feet distance, and face mask also should be used. Ensuring the caregivers perform the hand hygiene after every contact with the patient and immediately after the environment. In addition, they should wear the gloves when touching the patient, blood, stool, or any body fluid, saliva, sputum, nasal mucus, vomiting, and urine. Instruct the family members to avoid sharing the dishes, drinking glass, cups, eating utensils, towel, beddings, and other items. After the patient uses these items, should be washed thoroughly with a disposable glove and should be worn when handling these items. And the thermometer should not be shared. Avoid unmasked time together when they are eating or when the time together. Disinfection, cleaning and disinfection frequently high touch areas, and diluted house cloth bleach can be used, or alcohol solution with a 70% alcohol can be used for environmental cleaning. This is the recent guidelines, 28 April 2021 from the Ministry of Health, how revised guidelines for home isolation. In that, it's given us eligible for home isolation, and instruction for the patient, as we discussed, the same thing, only hand hygiene, mask, and restricting the visitors. And they have to all the family members should monitor the monitoring chart, and how to use the mask, how to perform the hand hygiene, and that all things. And biomedical waste disposal also, it's mentioned in that. That's a biomedical waste disposal in the home care. Here, whatever the patient use, like a face mask, gloves, tissues, and any other things, it should be soaked with a 1% sodium hypochlorite or in a bleaching solution and put it in a yellow bag. And the yellow bag should be given separately to the place where the common biomedical waste can be collected. It's not like a regular waste. And yellow bag, that the household, any infected items, if the patient use, that should be put it in yellow bag and handed over to the common biomedical waste collection facilities. This is the recent guidelines. Discontinuation of this precaution, there are two types of strategies are using. One is non-test based strategies and one is test based strategies. Non-test based strategies is preferred, and however, there depends upon the patient population and severity of the disease. Non-test based strategies allow the discontinuation of precaution based on the improvement of symptoms at specific intervals. Test-based strategies typically require 2 negative RT-PCR reports for COVID with more than or equal 24 hours apart. And otherwise, at least 10 days have passed since the symptoms are first appeared, or at least 2 days has passed since the resolution of fever without the use of fever reducing medication. And there is an improvement in symptoms like cough, shortness of breath. These are the criteria used to discontinuation of precautions. And once the infection control precaution or home isolation is discontinued, the patient should advised continue to follow public health recommendation like a wearing mask and then maintaining the distance. Additional consideration. So those who quarantine for 14 days if possible. Otherwise, the 14 days can be reduced to 10 days or 7 days, depends upon the availability of the healthcare workers, and negative CB-NAT or antigen test to be performed within the 48 hours to end the quarantine. And the preventing infection in the community, several strategies has been implemented to reduce the risk, and mainly use social distancing, use of mask, and frequent hand washing is the main thing. Physical distancing, wearing a mask, keeping the room well ventilated, avoid crowds, cleaning of your hands and coughing into the when we are coughing, use it should be in the elbow or in the shoulder, and check local advice where you live and work, and then vaccination. Maintain at least 1 meter distance between yourself and others. Make wearing a mask and then appropriate use, storage, disposal, and then cleaning of mask every day. How to make your environment safer? Avoid 3C, space that are closed, crowded, or close contact. The outbreaks are reported in restaurant, choir practices, fitness, nightclub, and offices. So where the people are talk loudly, shout, or breathe heavily. So that area to be avoided. And the risk of getting COVID-19 are higher in crowded and inadequate ventilated places. So that should be avoided. And meet people outside, outdoor gatherings safer than the indoor ones. Avoid crowded or indoor settings if you can. Take precautions. And always use the open window and to increase the natural ventilation when you are indoors. Regularly and thoroughly clean your hands with alcohol hand rubs or wash them with the soap and water. Avoid touching the eyes, nose, and mouth. Cover your mouth and nose with your bent elbow or a tissue paper while you cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect the surface frequently, especially frequently touched areas like your door handle, phone, screen, etc. This is about infection control practices in the healthcare settings, home as well as in the community.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Yeah. Warm greetings from Sri Devaraja's College of Nursing, R.L. Jalapa Hospital and Research Center, Kolar, with a special note of gratitude to Honorable Vice Chancellor and his esteemed administration, and the organizing team, Dr. Dayanand, Dean of Nursing, and all the other team. I'm privileged to share my important aspects on care of nurses or nurses preparedness. Government, WHO, ICMR, they have made abundant contributions with regard to COVID identification, diagnosis, treatment, vaccination, prevention, care centers, all this is a challenge that are going to be met and they are being on the process of meeting. But most often, what I find is the forgotten chapter is care of the caregiver. So here I would like to share a very important topic on how a nurse is supposed to be prepared. I hope my slides are visible.
Can you do it again, madam?
Yes. Sir?
No, madam. Please do it again, madam.
It's slides are seen, sir?
No, madam.
No. Gautam, please tell her how to do it.
Yes, sir. Madam, please open that PPT, madam.
Yes, sir. It's open, sir.
And please check, there is a blue color share screen options is there. You click on that. In the icons of this one, madam, in the down, this stop, mute, unmute, there is a participants, there is chat and share screen option is there, madam. Please click on that, madam.
There is a share content
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
icon. First, in the left
After the chart icon, madam, there is a share
there
screen
is
option.
mute. Right. There is start video. Next is share
Yes.
content.
Yes. Share it is there.
Hit that share content.
Click on
Share
that, madam. Share
screen
screen.
or share content. Are you using laptop?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Share content.
Yeah, madam. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Do it full screen, madam. Yeah.
Yes.
Slideshow.
Yeah, now, yes. Now go to full screen mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yes.
Lots of interventions are made and then efforts are made with regard to managing this pandemic crisis. But most often the forgotten aspect is care of the caregiver. That is the healthcare workers' preparedness, especially the nurses' preparedness, because they are the core healthcare providers. They are in the center of healthcare aspects. So here, why the nurse needs to be prepared and what she needs to be prepared will be presented under the following headings. That is, most challenging crisis the nurses are facing. And here, to overcome that most challenging crisis, she needs to have a self-care, courage, as well as the spiritual well-being. And also, nurses are supposed to be prepared the way they work at home, at profession, as well as at a societal level. So with this brief introduction, I just would like to go on to my co-speakers have given a very brief information and igniting information on COVID-19 second wave management, infection control, and the facts about all the matters. Nurses as frontline warriors lost themselves in the service of others. So nurses needs to be built, nurses needs to be prepared in terms of their preparedness to meet in this COVID crisis. Basically, I just would like to put the nursing role in a very simple way. That is, the basic to any philosophy of nursing seems to be in these three basic components. One is the reverence for the gift of life that God has given, and respect for the dignity, worth, autonomy, and individual of each human beings. And also, the nurses need to take a resolution to act dynamically in relation to one's belief. With this brief information in our mind, all the nurses who are as frontline warriors, let's prepare ourselves to prepare to meet this COVID crisis. The most challenging crisis that a nurse is facing today is physical challenges, that is the fear of infection and death. Then emotional instability, what to do next. And also she's having social and family apprehension and pressure. And spiritual deprivation, environmental circumstances are forcing her what to do next. And intellectually, she is overall confused. And most of the times, occupationally, whether the job is secured or not. And also, there are financial crises and challenges which are posed to the nursing. And other challenges include, as already my co-speakers have spoken, acute shortage of healthcare workers because of the quarantine or the infection, healthcare workers attrition because of fear, then violence against healthcare workers at hospitals, at homes, at society, and then social isolation and stigma, and a shocking professional demands, long duty hours, increased load of work and long hours in PPE, shortage of PPE, ethical dilemmas, as well as the family demands. So these are the most challenging crises where the nurse is standing with. The one side, the pandemic cry, another side is the balance between her life, family, as well as the professional call. Overcoming these challenges, I just would like to put it in this way, building self-care. Self-care is any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. So therefore, here I would like to say that good self-care balanced so that we could provide better care to the patient. Most of the times, nurses' self-care is just like an hidden iceberg. Only a tip of the care that is being projected, which is not expressed most of the times. But still, if nurses take courage and then make themselves understand that, yes, my care can improve the care of the nation and the world, we should be able to go on with that. So self-care dimension is being projected under 8 dimensions. The first dimension talks about systemic dimension of self-care. That is talking about taking care of physical health, habits, and then eating habits, exercise, and sleeping. Finally, the systemic dimension mainly focuses on that nurse should feel that we are alive. Then emotive dimension of self-care focuses on her communication skills, triggers, and response to what's happening around you. That is peace and calmness around you so that you could perform more better in this COVID crisis. Then luminescent dimension of self-care mainly focuses on confidently and unempathetically you are able to do. That is illuminate your inner self truth and you create your personal band. You are the person who is going to do the best and you are a unique person who has strengths as well as the gifts. So this aspect has to be strengthened by ourselves so that we are going to meet the need in this crisis. Next is the financial dimension of self-care. That is allocating the resources adequately in the right time for the right cause. Then physical fitness is very important. And then also spending time in managing finances is also important. That is living right now and preparing for the ones that you are creating the future. And the 5th dimension talks about cognitive dimension of self-care. That is, you will focus on your attention on what you want rather than what you don't want. Think better so that your thoughts are focusing on achieving a goal and meeting the challenges. The aptitudinal dimension of self-care is nothing but that is meaningful contribution to the world. We have to make a meaningful contribution for the purpose of life. That is uniquely, we have to lead into the life of others. Relational dimension of self-care, that is how we connect with others. That is, we'll explore our personal relationships, friendships, partnerships, and family relationships, creating healthier connections, mutually beneficial and respectful. And the last dimension is environmental dimension of self-care that will be more grounded and connected to the world around you. A caregiver, as a nurse, a core team of the nurse, if these 8 dimensions are taken care, then we can be strengthened to meet this second wave of pandemic. So here, I just would like to put it in a summary. The 7 pillars of self-care mainly focuses on a nurse should be knowledgeable and have a good background of what she is trying to do is based on literature and evidence-based, and should be sound in mind so that the balanced decision will be taken. All the emotions are under control. And also talking about the doing exercise, that is physical activity, is very important. After the duty hours or after the COVID care, most of us forget to take care of ourselves by not doing the physical activity. So it is very important balancing physical activity. Healthy eating, that is also very, very important. Choose to eat the best, which will keep our immunity boosted. Then avoiding the risk, any habits that would lead into a bad risk, that would be avoided. And then good hygiene is very, very important. Hand washing, mask, social distancing, and also following all the infection control precautions. Then rational use of products and services. Since we treat the patients, most of the nurses or healthcare providers go for self-medication. So that should be avoided. So rational use of products is very, very important. So preparedness in terms of meeting this pandemic crisis is take care. That is, self-care is very, very important. The second aspect of my session focuses on courage, building the courage. I know most of us or most of the healthcare providers have lost the courage. Courage, it is not that always it will make a noise or roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. So here I would like to say, with your self-care, the courage also has to go along. Here is the circle that talks about the courage. What are the core important points here? I just would like to highlight on our courage should have a purpose. Our courage also should have a belonging, mastery, and independence. That means the circle of courage mainly focuses on the purpose is nothing but this is shown through the opportunities to show concern in acts of kindness and altruism. Ultimately, the nursing stands on altruistic service. So the outcome of your purposeful courage should be, I am considerate to others. Next, focus is on belonging. That is, developing through many opportunities which you are facing during the patient care, a trusting bonds between patient, human, healthcare workers has to be developed so that at the end of your courage circle, you will be developing, I am important to someone and my decision and my belonging will give a positive health to others. So that you have to take into consideration. Next one is the mastery. That is opportunities to creatively solve problems, meeting the goals for achievement of the objectives or achievement of patient care or best outcome of the patient care. So here the mastery of courage will at the end give an outcome of I am able to solve the problems. It may be a critical patient, it may be a home patient, home care patient, or it may be a patient who is only requiring a basic counseling, but I am able to create a future or create a health for that particular patient. Last one aspect or concept of courage circle is independence. This is mainly fostered by opportunities to grow in responsibility and autonomy. Once we have created a pathway, that independence should turn as an autonomy as nursing standard practice. So I am in charge of my action, that is create an evidence where the care path is created and standards are created. Once again, I just would like to say that the circle of courage mainly focus on Let your courage have a purpose. Let our courage have belonging, mastery, as well as the independence. So that these aspects of courage will lead us into a positive action and positive outcome in patient care. Overcoming this challenging crisis also will emphasize on spiritual well-being. Every man is being created by God. We need to connect to God. So whenever we have got this COVID, hearing the news of COVID, we say, what next? What is happening? What will be the future? So therefore here, a healthcare provider or a nurse should have a spiritual wellness or a balance. That is, to have the spiritual wellness, every nurse should explore the inner self. That is, take time to think about who we are and what we are. And spending time in meditation, that also will help the nurse to boost her spiritual well-being. And always practicing acceptance. Now, as the pandemic second wave has come, we have to believe that, we have to accept that, yes, this also we can win and we can trust and we can also bring a change. So practicing acceptance is important. And next one is being very curious, that is taking a moment to explore the experience a little deeper. Let us try to go into the deeper, why this action or why this is happening or why this pandemic situation is happening. So even balancing in that spiritual wellness, being curious also can help us to grow more broader in our spiritual well-being. And finally, what I just would like to say, look for a religious faith that we are believing in or that we are agreeing in. Okay, to become a best prepared nurse, we should take care of ourselves. We should be courageous to talk for our profession and provide care. And also we should have a spiritual well-being. If this is being balanced, then we'll be able to provide best care to our patients. Here, there are few strategies. My colleagues have already spoken at professional level, at hospital level, at healthcare centers, what they can do. But here, a few tips I just would like to share with you, how we can implement the self-care and courage at professional level, personal level, as well as the societal level. Professional level, when we think changing the way we work, that is nothing but we have to train and retrain ourselves. It is not that what we have heard yesterday is same today. Every day, the protocols, the standards, and the categorization of patient, everything is being changed. Government is making enormous efforts on giving us the protocols and the standards. So therefore, we should be aware on our what is the update in care of the patient. So all the nurses should prepare to train and retrain on the current concepts. Then establishing a scientific reasonable shift schedule. Always it is very important. In this PPE, in this crisis, we have to establish a scientific schedules for duties. What happens is a repeated duty or an over duty may also cause a kind of attrition or a health illness or a health break. So therefore, we have to take care about the scheduling of duties, and adherence to the infection control is very important. And then seeking the psychological counseling, because many of the nurses are confused with when we put them for a COVID duty, all are confused with what, where, how, what will happen. So this psychological counseling has to be arranged at the health centers, hospitals, as well as even all the COVID centers. Then avoiding unnecessary contacts by getting the informations and then not having any intellectual guidance. Maintaining good physical, mental, and social emotional stability so that the professionally we will be prepared to meet all the challenges that we are faced with. And finally, I just would like to say that professional level balance between the work and family, because we have to balance our profession also with our families. So here, the first point we have focused on changing the way we work, that is at a professional level. Importantly, I would like to say that we have to be training ourselves and retraining ourselves. Here are the few tips that we have already discussed. Safety first is safety always, and all the infection control practices have to be done. The changing the way we are seeing our work, that is at our personal and family level. We have to balance ourselves, saying that everything is not equally important. So we have to prioritize and do fewer things and do them well, that is commit completely and committed. And we have to decide what are our values and what it takes into. And also we have to focus on things that we can do. We cannot take the things which we are not able to control nor do, but we should focus on things which we can achieve and we can do. And very important thing is, importantly, we have to do things which must be done immediately. That is, give priority so that it will be helpful for us, so that we balance between the personal as well as the family level. At societal level, there are few tips, that is communicating, that is supporting only the mental and psychosocial well-being in different target groups, because we as healthcare providers and nurses, they will have high expectations from us. What is the reality? So we need to communicate what is the concept or what is the reality. Then we have to be empathetic to all the affected COVID-19. And then we should refer the people, we should not refer the people of COVID as victims, because most of the times in the society, in the family, the COVID-19 cases are referred as victims. So that has to be avoided. Minimizing and watching, reading, listening news about COVID-19. Then protecting ourselves and then supporting others. That is also very important. And we have to amplify positive and hopeful stories. And we have to take care of ourselves in the society, avoid unhelpful strategies. Maybe people will say, this is another strategy where we can prevent the COVID, or this is another center where you can come and then take the treatment. All this society will be looking at us. So therefore, unhelpful strategies should be prevented. Then we have to stay connected with the family so that we balance between professional work as well as the community. And then we need to be counseled. Most of the nurses need to be counseled. And then we should have a good communication and give care to the vulnerable team. So this is our role at a societal level, where nurses have to be prepared, because after the work hours, we have to go to the society and we have to do all the contributing work which will ensure and build the courage of the society. And coming to the balance between the work and the family, to have this balance, each of the nurse should possess a knowledge on the family as well as the work. That is knowledge on self, others, and then tasks. At family level, you should know yourself and who are in the family, as well as what are your contributions in the family. But at the same time, in the work level, you have to know what is your organization, what are the expectations from the organization, and which area you are functioning in, or what role you are taking in. Coming to the behavior in the family, you have to be informal and have a good social relationship. In the workplace, we have to have a formal roles as well as the professional integrity and contribution. Coming to the skill that we should possess, that is peacekeeping. Most often, the healthcare providers have lost the peace, and they are been projecting that in the family levels. And then many families are suffering because of lack of either skill or knowledge that they are not able to balance. So therefore, we should have a peacekeeping and sharing of feeling and networking with the family. Whereas in the organizations or your workplaces, make decisions and then contribute for decisions, and then technical expertise you should have in providing care to the patients, as well as communicate on what is required. So here I just would like to say that the working nurse or a nurse should have a balance between the family as well as the profession, which is knit together, which is shown in the model. Finally, I just would like to say that a take-home message, since all the aspects of COVID-19 second wave is being covered, I have just briefly highlighted on a self-care, courage, spiritual well-being, as well as strategies on improving on working at professional level, at societal level, as well as balancing between the family as well as the professional work. So here I just would like to say that let's pledge to reverence, respect, and make resolution for the gift of life that God has given and act dynamically in relation to one's belief in COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, one and all. Thanks for giving this opportunity. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay safe. Together we can fight this COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank
I
you.
thank the Rebecca madam and Asha Vijayan madam and Dr. Zinat madam for their good presentation. Now I request Dr. Rupashri to get into the question answer session. Over to Dr. Rupashri.
Thank you very much, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, very clear.
Thank you so much, especially to the speakers for their excellent talk, which has covered most of the required aspects in the nurses. And thank you so much. And I want to mention a special thanks to all the enthusiastic participants for their questions. But more than questions, we have a lot of greetings in the chat box, which is really nice. Okay, so I will read out some questions. Okay, and I request all the participants to go for the hand raise option so that you can ask the speakers directly. So the first question what we have in the chat box is, Madam, any one of you can take up this question. Can we take a vaccine if have skin allergy, especially? Shall I ask Dr. Rebecca, madam? Please answer the question.
Madam, any allergic, it is really to a matter of concern. So better they need to get consultation over the dermatologist and then decide about on that.
Any
Many of-
kind of allergies, they have to consult their.
It's a matter of concern, actually. Yes.
Okay, so they have to be careful. Okay, so most of the questions were related to vaccination, and I'll compile all these questions because most of them were repeated. I'll just compile them and I'll ask. First question is, the concern is because of this opening of vaccination for 18 years and above, many people are panicking if they don't get the vaccination second dose in time. Is it a problem? Rebecca?
Ma'am, yeah, for vaccination, if they taken first dose, it gives somewhat of protection. Okay, if they are not able to take for some time also, the risk is less if they taken one and then there is a gap for the first and second. And whenever it is available, they can take. It is nothing wrong in that, taking one vaccine and giving a gap in that.
Gap in that. Okay. And the question is, if a patient is recovered from COVID infection, does they also require to take vaccination?
Yes.
And if yes, what should be the gap between the recovery and vaccination?
Around 90 days that the resistance will be there in the body,
CDC.
according to the CDC. So they can take after 90 days also, and then that CDC is explaining in that way, ma'am. Otherwise, they have to consult a physician who is dealing with the vaccination session.
Okay.
Anyway, immediate vaccination is not required. Their body already having that resistance.
Okay. Then they want to know what is the recovery rate of COVID-19 infection. But it's a tough question. Recovery rate.
Vaccination questions.
Yes, ma'am. Rebecca, ma'am. Gautam, please unmute Rebecca, madam, and Zinata, madam.
No, they can do, madam. They can do
Madam,
that.
please unmute your, yes.
Recovery rate, I'm not sure right now to say.
Okay. And we have questions here. And to the information of the
Dr.
participants.
Rupashri,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm about to.
I'd like to intervene here.
Yes, sir.
For all the participants, what I would like to tell you is there is one session on vaccination in the next week. Okay, it will be presented by our WHO consultant, Dr. Lokesh. Okay, and then next is regarding vaccination. All of you, please you consult your physician. Okay, and take his suggestion regarding the vaccine. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Rupesh.
Okay, sir. So, madam, can a cardiomegaly patient with chronic hypertension can that person take vaccine?
Madam, every vaccination needs a consultation if they are having comorbidities.
Yes, yes.
Yes, because every comorbidity we can't measure because it is individualistic. So they have to take a consultation and they can take the vaccination.
Added to madam, this thing, every vaccination center has a physician there present. So you can directly walk in there and get your queries, and then they may be able to refer to the concern, like for cardiology referral they'll be doing, or dermatology referral they'll be able to do. So all those questions can be addressed by the physician who is trained for the vaccination program.
Yes, madam. Now the doubt of everybody is, if I take vaccine, will I get COVID? Yes. Only thing, COVID vaccination can prevent the severity of the disease. And also it depends further again on the comorbidities that is existing. If he is already a known diabetic person, hypertensive person, and having other immunocompromised diseases, yes, he may get the disease. So therefore, it is the severity reduction is there. Severity reduction is there. So I think all of us should understand that vaccination will not prevent the occurrence of COVID. Yes, madam. Rebecca, madam,
Yes,
do you agree? Yes.
we see reinfections among our healthcare workers.
Yes.
And but our infection control officer will agree for if there is any breach in standard precautions.
Yeah.
A lot of chances
Breach
are
in
there
IPC.
for IPC practices. Breach is the main reason. As you said, immunocompromised, yeah, all the time they are they have to be protected, but
Yes.
any breach in IPC practices will definitely have a reinfection, even
Yes,
though
madam.
people are vaccinated. So this is important information. Vaccination, okay, I've got vaccinated, I am free, I can go
Yeah.
without mask, I can mingle with everyone. So
Yeah.
all those are high risk behavior.
High
So
risk.
that has to be stopped immediately and work. Okay, vaccination will give you some amount of protection, but that will definitely doesn't stop the occurrence of reinfection.
Yes, madam.
Okay. So here is a question. What should be the first aid for COVID patients whose saturation is less than 90%, but no oxygen is available at the hospital?
Yeah, position. Yeah. Oxygen, yeah, they definitely they have to be referred if they don't have a comorbidities of COPD. So in that case, it will come as less than 90. That is why we are maintaining 90 to 94 only. That awake proning we are asking them to do with as it is instructed. So it is wise that they need to be referred immediately because if there is no oxygen availability. So they need to be really referred.
Some articles are telling that like a chest physio, like a cupping of the chest and backside, that also will improve the oxygenation. There are some studies also there. So that can be applicable, ma'am, here.
Okay. So one question is, Which vaccine is good for a person of 60 years, Covishield or Covaxin?
We are not virologists.
Yeah. So we are getting a lot of, I think, students are there, so they are very curious about this vaccine.
So, okay, you can go to the CDC websites, WHO websites. Lot of vaccination advices.
Both vaccines are safe. Both vaccines are effective. There is not a question of superiority or inferiority. Both vaccines are equally safe and good. Please refer to Government of India or Government of Karnataka guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So the question is, Deepika, she is telling they hear complaints of COVID patients' death, sudden death. And they're like, what care should be the main to avoid the sudden fatal conditions? This is a tough question.
Sudden death in the hospital or at home?
Sudden death in the hospital and home. Sometimes we
Maybe
hear,
they would have missed the hypoxia identification, madam.
yes, yeah.
Okay, that is why it is very important. Once you diagnosed with COVID positive report, the oxygen saturation twice a day, it is very, very important to monitor. Not keeping all the time fingers, having anxiousness, no. It has to be at least every 4th hourly or every 6th hourly. So see that. So how it has to be done? Okay, at rest oxygen saturation to be monitored. And after that, you see if it is 95, 96 like that. Okay, you have an exertion, like you walk for 6 minutes, like a normal walk. You can walk, and then at exertion, what is your saturation level? You can identify. So at rest as well as at exertion. So if it is not dropping, then you are on safer side. So oxygen saturation should be maintained to prevent the sudden this thing. So it is very important. Not only the temperature, saturation has to be maintained because it's very costly. With pulse oximeter 2,000, 3,000, I don't think our people will be able to this thing. Even though the kit is provided by some of the hospitals, so we are providing for all COVID kit only. We are providing. Some of the hospitals are providing. So I think that will be the wise if they provide the kit for the patients who are positive.
Okay. Gautam, can we take any hand
Yeah,
raise?
yes, madam. Hand raise. Viru is there, madam.
Yeah.
Please ask, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. The presentation was really good. Well, I have the question to ask you. Well, in the last year, when my friends were doing the COVID duties, they are providing any such accommodation and they are being forced to go home. So now my friends are going home, they are doing COVID duty. So I think this is really not going good actually, because even we might have taken vaccines, but we go home, we expose our.
No, they have asked to go home. Can you repeat the question? Please?
It's not audible.
Your voices are breaking. I came to know that people who are working in the COVID positive area are asked to go home and not quarantined.
Ma'am, actually what happened in the last year, no, they have given accommodation in separate building, but this year they are not providing it. And in the last year, what was like, even after doing 7 days of duty, they were given extra additional 3 or 4 days of leave so that they can get home quarantine. But this year, because of case overload, we are not getting that leave. And also we are traveling from home, we are doing duties continuously. So even we don't know where to approach to avoid that thing, because in a month, 7 days of duty, okay, but we are forced to do continuous duty, and also we are traveling from home. So this is where we have the confusions, like we are risking our own family members with this COVID thing. So is there anything we can do to protect our family? Because even as a COVID warrior, even our family members' life also matters actually.
Sir, as we discussed in IPC, if you are maintaining all the precautions like distancing, masking, and then maintain the contact time less, if it is you are in a home or if you are in any quarantine place, that is same only. And then not sharing your bedrooms as well as the bathrooms. So if you're using a single bathroom and single isolation room, wherever you are, if maybe in a quarantine place or if you're at a home, it be safe. So maybe the institution policy may change, because last time they would have provided, this time they are not able to provide, but our duty to maintain all the IPC precaution along with the standard precaution will protect us. Because last 1 year we are seeing the cases and we are seeing our healthcare workers, whoever is maintaining the precautions and their strict adherence to IPC practices, they are not at all affected. And if whatever we are providing along with PPE, if they are careless in the like a breach when they are doffing in the doffing room, most of all the exposure is happening in the doffing room. So whatever you are doing, whatever precautions you are taking, that will be helping to you protecting your family members or the community.
Just adding to Asha madam, I told in the difference, first difference during the first wave, we don't know anything about that. So that is the one thing. We don't know anything about that. It was evolving, sudden it was onset. So that is why now we have a lot of information on this COVID-19 virus behaviors, how to control, how to be on safe. So it's like take universal precautions, like how we consider all patients as HIV possible patients, because we don't test HIV test for every patient who come to the hospital. So like that, you consider all patients may be potentially positive. So take precautions and do the work, so that the same thing is applicable when you go home. You have to take precautions with hand hygiene, as she said, mentioned. So we have a lot of information on that, so we can safely work on that. Yeah, I understand your problem, but there are standard precautions always we have to keep, make us a habit. So then it can be prevented.
Just I would like
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
contribute. Yes, you had an apprehension of going home directly, of course. Okay, as Madam Rebecca as well as Asha Madam has told, we should not have a breach in our IPC, that is infection control. We are very much aware about it. But also take a special precaution when you have a vulnerable team at your home. That is also very important. A neonate may be there, very old people may be there, or a cancer patients may be there. During such situations, see that you see either an accommodation at your healthcare center, or you follow all the social distancing and infection control practices. That would also strengthen your balance between your work as well as the family. Yes.
Okay. Gautam, can you go for other questions?
Yes, madam. Please ask, madam, which is covers 17.
Kausar 17.
17, yes, madam. Kausar 17, please ask your question.
Kausar 17, please unmute yourself and ask the question. If there is nobody else, go in for the chat box, please.
Okay. Again, a lot of questions. So I'll, combine all regarding the vaccination itself.
Really?
First is pregnancy, during menstruation, or nursing mothers. Can they take vaccine? Madam, am I clear?
Yes, but vaccines for the
Rebecca, ma'am?
yes, ma'am. Yes, madam, for the special population anyway.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I think sir has told the vaccination classes are yet to come. So I think the special population here in our hospital as such, we are not advising, ma'am. But I don't know whether I can apply to all. Really, it is difficult.
And the question is on plasma therapy. Criteria for donation of plasma, like how to, that also again needs.
So I think the doctors has a role in that to identify
especially the trained for
and they have to be trained for those things. So and those they will be taking care. We need to know only the nurses' role.
Yes.
Okay, so we restrict the questions regarding the nurses' role and
Yes.
their aspects here. Okay, then thank you, madam. Thank you, Asha ma'am, Rebecca ma'am, and Zeenat ma'am. Over to you, sir. Dayanand sir.
Okay. On behalf of the So now all the question and answer session is over, Dr. Rupashri?
Dayanand, 1 second.
Ah.
Request VC sir to give closing remarks.
Closing, yes.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, everybody. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor sir to
Vice
give his closing remarks.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. The participation was very good. There are a lot of questions were generated, and the speakers did take up the issues and then answered them very well. I'm sure such programs will definitely benefit a lot of delegates. There are a lot of take-home messages. I only wish that this presentation is put on the YouTube and will be available for others to see it whenever they want. Looking at the response by the nursing profession, I thought we'll organize more and more such CNE programs so that many other topics can be covered and issued. So this is what I will again. Thank you so much for all the 3 speakers who did a great job, and I also thank everybody for participating in such large numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dayanand, vote of thanks.
On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Registrar of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, it's my great pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks. First, I thank all the speakers who have, within a short period of time, they accepted our invitation and they have presented their topic very well. And then it was been very much taken up by the participants, and the questions raised itself, which shows the way and also the way they have spoken. And then I thank our all the participants who have participated in this. It was, I think, more than 1,100, I think, the participants are present here in this today's training program. So I thank all of them for their participation. And then I thank all the, I thank our Vice Chancellor as well as our Registrar for giving us the opportunity to conduct such programs. And I thank one and all for help for this program. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gautam, you can close the meeting.
I thank Gautam also, might have forgotten, and ECHO India.
Gautam, you can close the meeting.
Yes, sir.
please.
Thanks.
I thank you also, Gautam.
Thank you.